Hey, this is Mark, and this is more Sunday school knife talk. I want to continue. I did all that standing there talking in theory, but let me show you what I'm talking about. This knife is called a 70/30 grind. This is a 150 millimeter, which is like a 6 or 7 inch petty knife. This is its sister in a different steel, and it's called an 80/20. But when you look at these knives side by side, they look like they're identical. But according to that number, that ratio that we discussed earlier, that we've dispelled, that it doesn't mean anything, this is the proof of it. That these knives, and they're both similar steels in hardness, they're both less than 60 steels in hardness, but the number that was assigned to it in the catalog suggests that one should be treated differently than the other. When I compare the bevel heights differ from knife to knife. And if I compare the size on the inside in a 70/30 uneven ground knife, now let's look at that for a minute. And I'll show you what I mean. See how this side looks flat? This side doesn't look any different. Maybe if you took it to the sink and let some water lay on there, you might see that it crowns off. And this side, you may see a dish. But when I compare these knives described as 80/20, 70/30, that number tells me that they were ground differently, whereas they don't look side to side ground differently, let alone knife to knife ground differently. And when I compare the bevel heights, the 80/20, you would expect this bevel to be smaller than that one in a bigger difference than this bevel would be larger than that one. This only 70/30, this one 80/20. So the 80 side you'd expect to be taller. But in reality, looking at them side by side, this one on the 70 knife looks like an 80, and this one looks like a 70 if you're comparing them side by side the way they're called. So that's why we decided that's BS. He said it was BS himself. I decided it was BS before I called John Broida, and he confirmed that there was no correlation from the grinder with those numbers through the catalog to the instructions of the ratio of how you sharpen left to right. There was no real correlation. It's an attempt to try to tell people how to sharpen the knives, but it doesn't work very well. This is another Sushin knife. This one is called a 90/10 in their catalog. It is a very thin 210 millimeter petty knife. It's a very cool knife. It is shorter beveled on the inside. This is the outside in a right-handed knife. The bevels correlate that one is a shorter bevel than the other, but not any way that I could look at and say, wow, that's a 90/10 knife. I just know that it looks like the bevel is so small on one side that it looks like it was single-sided sharpened. Like all the attention was on one side more than the other. And 90/10, I could understand that. But when you get to 80/20 and then 70/30, the ratios are too definite. They're stating a size that doesn't correlate with what I'm physically seeing. Okay, I'm going to move on. These are Masamoto knives. They are also 150 millimeter petty knives, and they are different steels. So besides using these as a test subject for sharpening 70/30, these are cataloged as 70/30 ground, uneven grind, asymmetrical grind, uneven bevels. Call it what you want. It is a V grind that is uneven. So it's a hard thing. The 70-30 is supposed to designate the amount of unevenness and a guide to sharpening and a ratio, and it doesn't hold up. That's what we're discussing, because I bought these knives to use them to sharpen them to compare the steel. See, I'm a steel nut too, and I sharpen with steel and match it to whetstones, trying to make a statement about which whetstone works best with which steel. That was where I was first, and then I realized in my collection I had all these 70-30 knives, and then I spread my study to include and qualify how to sharpen the 70-30 knives as compared to the 80-20 and the 90-10. That's where this all came from. But it started with my love of wanting to be able to sharpen every steel so I could correlate which steel with which whetstone. So I have had these knives, and then I said, well, cool, but you can't really make a statement with one knife, so that's why I got multiples. I thought, statistically, it let me draw a conclusion and at least feel comfortable about it. So now for a 70-30 knife, this side would get 70% because it's a right-handed knife. This side would get 30%. I believe, holding these knives, that this side appears flatter than this side. It appears to me that there's some sort of, not a crown, but like it's higher here and it goes off, almost like a wing, like the bottom of the wing is flatter and the top of the wing, where the air goes over it to go faster to create lift, it's almost like that. And that's flatter. But that may be, like I said in the other night, here's another one. That may be my hope. This knife, you can see, is scratched, and this is a knife that I previously owned. I just bought this one in a this one in a high carbon steel. This one in a high carbon steel. I previously had these stainless steel ones. So these three are all 70-30, and I got them to compare them, and what I'm trying to exhibit to you is that it's pretty damn hard to know what you're sharpening. So someone drops these off to a sharpening guy and says sharpen them. How do you know what you have? Maybe there's a little more thickness there. Again, I can take these to the sink and play with the water and see how it runs off, and I do that. You guys that are sharpening at home with wicked edges, you can do that. You guys with the belts, you don't get into it like that. Okay, I have now these Fujiwara Kanafusas. I have about 6 different knives, petties and gyutos. This is a small gyuto. This one is one of the first uneven knives that I ever bought. And I sharpened this knife 50-50. I played with it. I sharpened this knife in a ratio I calculated with my calculator. I set the angles in a ratio that tried to explain 70-30, and I think I went with 20 and 14. And then I sharpened it the next time 50-50. All I can tell you is every time I sharpened this knife, it sharpened up easily and well, took a nice edge, and it was very sharp. So I cannot say that if it was sharpened correctly, according to the grind 70-30, that it would behave any better. I'm looking at the shine across it as I slant the knife. And this side, it looks like the shine is wider, suggesting to me that that knife is flatter. And this, you can see how it's a narrow band. That's the kind of stuff I do. Whether or not it's science, whether I'm right, I don't know, but I'm sharing with you the tools that I use. This is another Fujiwara Kanafusa. This is a OS 8 with gratans. This is I think SK4 is the steel. I just got this one. And again, the same thing. If you look at the kanjis, they're stamped in there. You can sort of see a pucker, whether that indicates one side is flatter. I look at the reflection. This one bends off here below the kanji, whereas this one behaves differently. Whether that means anything in reality, I don't know, but it certainly looks different from side to side to me. This is see how wide the light is there? I'm going on and on. I got to watch the clock. This one, to me, it seems that it holds up. I don't know. You are the first that I'm ever putting it out there like this. I might have discussed it. Here is a 210. It's like a chef knife, but it's a petty. It's a very cool knife. Nice for slicing pork tenderloin. For sandwiches, cold pork tenderloin. The same thing here. You can see how the light is like just there, like it's flat. And here it's got a width to it and a bend. So that's the Kanafusas. I have these 3 by the same company. Again, I bought them because I study the steels, and these are 3 different steels. A high carbon steel, the right hand and the left hand, and this is an AUS 8, which is a stain resistant steel. And looking at these, to me it becomes very easy by looking at how thick that is and how thin that is here. To me, it becomes very clear in this brand of knife. You can see the pucker from the thickness and how wide that is, that they are. Now, this is the discussion I had earlier with the old one, which is a right hand, and the new one, which is a left hand. But when you look at the knives, they look like it's the same effing thing. And I was really crushed, and I fired off an email to Koki, the dealer, and he said, is it in a white label and Japanese on the box and this and that? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, the knife is sharpened for a left-handed person, but if you look one side to the other, they look like it's the same 70-30 grind knife, just the differences in the applied edge. Now, I have not used it yet. I look forward to using it so that I can indeed learn if there is a difference in the feel. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This is a knife I just bought because it was advertised as a 60-40. Now, I look at this knife and I can see the thickness. It's clearly, I can see the thickness. I don't see any difference from one side to the other. When I put it on the microscope and I photographed it, there is a difference in sizes, heights of one bevel to the other, but that doesn't mean anything because I seldom ever see, except for in a guided sharpening situation, that you would have 2 bevels left to right that match. Seldom do you see that. This one is a 180 millimeter Giotto by Kagayaki, and I bought this to compare a 70-30 front to back, and I can see the thickness of the bar of light, which tells me that this knife is asymmetrical. I'm going to have to wrap this up because I'm running out of time on this video, and I'm going to jump over to another one.